Imagine a cold morning in the winter of 1917. In the city of Petrograd in Russia, the streets are covered with snow. Food is scarce, and long lines of hungry people stand outside bakeries, hoping to buy a small piece of bread. Among them is a young textile worker named Anna. Like thousands of other women in the city, she works long hours in a factory producing cloth for the war effort. Her workdays are exhausting, often lasting more than 10 hours. The factory is noisy, the air is full of dust, and the wages are barely enough to survive. At home, her family struggles to find food. The country is exhausted by war, and prices are rising every day. On March 8, 1917, something unusual happens. Anna and many other women workers decide they have had enough. Instead of going to work, they leave the factories and begin marching through the streets. They carry no weapons. Their demands are simple but powerful. They shout for bread and peace. More workers join them. The protest grows larger and larger. Within a few days, the demonstrations spread across the entire city. What began as a protest by women workers soon turns into a massive political movement that changes the course of history. The Russian Tsar is forced to step down, and soon after, women in Russia gained the right to vote. These brave women did not know it at the time, but their protest would later become one of the most important events connected to what we now call International Women's Day. And that is why every year on March 8th, people around the world remember the long struggle for women's rights and equality. Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. If you enjoy improving your English while learning about interesting topics related to history, society, and culture, then you are in the right place. In today's episode, we're going to talk about an important day that is recognized around the world every year on March 8th, International Women's Day. Many people know this day as a moment when women receive appreciation, flowers, or kind messages. However, the story behind International Women's Day is much deeper than a simple celebration. It is closely connected to the history of social movements, workers' rights, political change, and the long struggle for gender equality. In this episode, we will explore how this day started, the historical events that shaped it, why March 8th became the official date, and why this day still has great importance in our modern world. Understanding the history behind International Women's Day helps us better understand the social changes that have taken place over the last century and the challenges that still remain today. So let's begin by looking at the meaning and the origins of this important day. International Women's Day is a global day dedicated to recognizing the achievements of women and promoting gender equality. It is a moment to reflect on the progress that societies have made, but also to acknowledge the challenges that women still face in many parts of the world. In different countries, the day is celebrated in different ways. Some societies organize conferences, educational events, and public discussions. Universities, Schools and organizations often host lectures and workshops that explore women's roles in history, politics, science, and culture. In other countries, the day has a more symbolic or cultural character. People give flowers, cards, or small gifts to women as a sign of appreciation and respect. However, International Women's Day was not originally created as a cultural celebration. Its roots lie in social activism and political movements. The day emerged from a period in history when women began demanding fundamental rights that many people today consider basic and obvious. These rights included the right to vote, the right to work under fair conditions, the right to receive education, and the right to participate in political decision-making. To understand why such demands were necessary, we must look at the social conditions that women faced at the beginning of the 20th century. At that time, women across many societies faced significant limitations. They had fewer legal rights than men and were often excluded from political life. In most countries, women were not allowed to vote in national elections, and they had very limited opportunities to influence political decisions. Education was another area where inequality existed. Although some women had access to education, universities and professional careers were largely dominated by men. Because of these conditions, early women's rights movements began to grow. Workers' unions, political groups, and social activists started raising their voices against inequality. These early movements laid the foundation for what would eventually become International Women's Day. At the beginning of the 20th century, the world was going through a period of rapid industrialization. Factories were expanding, cities were growing quickly, and large numbers of people moved from rural areas to urban centers in search of work. Women played an important role in this new industrial workforce. Many worked in textile factories, garment production, food processing, and domestic service. Although these jobs were essential for the economy, they were often poorly paid and physically demanding. Working days were extremely long. In many factories, workers spent 10 to 12 hours a day performing repetitive and exhausting tasks. Safety regulations were minimal, and workplace accidents were common. In addition to these difficult working conditions, women also faced strong social limitations. In most countries, women were excluded from political life. They were not allowed to vote in national elections, and they rarely had the opportunity to participate in political debates or decision-making processes. Education was another area where inequality existed. Although some women had access to education, universities and professional careers were largely dominated by men. Because of these conditions, many women began to organize collectively. Workers' unions, political groups, and social activists started raising their voices against inequality. One of the earliest important events related to International Women's Day happened in 1909 in the United States. On February 28th of that year, the Socialist Party of America organized what they called National Women's Day. The goal was to support women workers and to promote the idea that women should have the right to vote. Meetings and demonstrations were organized in several cities. and activists spoke about the need for social reforms. These included better labor laws, improved working conditions, and equal political rights. Although the event took place only in the United States, the idea quickly attracted international attention. Activists in Europe began discussing the possibility of creating a similar day that could unite women across different countries. In 1910, a major political gathering called the International Socialist Women's Conference took place in Copenhagen, Denmark. The conference brought together more than 100 women from 17 different countries. Many of the participants were activists who were deeply involved in labor movements and campaigns for women's rights. They shared experiences, discussed social problems, and explored strategies for achieving greater equality. During this conference, a German activist named Clara Zetkin presented an important proposal. She suggested creating an annual International Women's Day. Her idea was that women around the world should organize demonstrations on the same day every year to demand equal rights. The proposal received strong support from the participants, who unanimously agreed with the idea. The following year, in 1911, the first International Women's Day was celebrated in several European countries, including Germany, Austria, Denmark, and Switzerland. The response was extraordinary. More than 1 million people participated in public meetings, demonstrations, and political discussions. Participants demanded important rights that many people today consider normal, such as the right to vote, access to education, fair working conditions, and protection against discrimination. At that time, however, the date of the celebration was not fixed yet. The date March 8th became historically important because of events that happened in Russia in 1917. During the First World War, Russia was facing severe economic difficulties. Food shortages were widespread, prices were rising rapidly, and many families struggled to survive. On March 8th, thousands of women textile workers in the city of Petrograd organized a strike. They marched through the streets demanding bread and peace. What began as a protest by women workers quickly expanded into a large social movement. Workers from other industries joined the demonstrations, and the protests continued for several days. These events eventually triggered the Russian Revolution, one of the most significant political transformations of the 20th century. Soon after the revolution began, the Russian Tsar was forced to abdicate, and important political reforms followed. One of these reforms was the recognition of women's right to vote in Russia. Because women had played such a crucial role in initiating the protests on March 8th, this date later became permanently associated with International Women's Day. For many decades afterward, the day was mainly celebrated in socialist and communist countries. For many years, International Women's Day was not widely recognized in Western countries. However, global awareness about gender equality increased significantly during the 20th century. A major turning point occurred in 1975 when the United Nations officially recognized International Women's Day during International Women's Year. 2 years later, the United Nations invited countries around the world to celebrate March 8th as a day dedicated to women's rights and international peace. Since then, International Women's Day has become a truly global event celebrated in more than 100 countries. Today, the day has both symbolic and practical importance. Many organizations use the day to highlight important issues, such as unequal pay, discrimination in the workplace, gender-based violence, and limited opportunities for girls' education in some parts of the world. At the same time, International Women's Day is also a moment to celebrate achievements. Women around the world have made remarkable contributions to science, medicine, politics, literature, technology, education, and many other fields. Their work has helped shape modern societies and improve the lives of millions of people. Every year, international organizations also choose a specific theme for the day. These themes focus on global challenges such as women's leadership, economic independence, and the fight against discrimination. Although significant progress has been made over the past century, gender inequality still exists in many forms. In numerous countries, women continue to earn less than men for similar work. In some societies, women face barriers when trying to enter leadership positions or political roles. In other parts of the world, girls may still have limited access to education. For these reasons, International Women's Day continues to serve both as a celebration and as a reminder. It celebrates the achievements and progress that have been made, but it also reminds us that the pursuit of equality is an ongoing process that requires effort from individuals, institutions, and societies. Understanding the history of this day allows us to appreciate the struggles of earlier generations and encourages us to continue working toward a more fair and inclusive world. So, as we have seen, March 8th is much more than a simple date on the calendar. It represents more than a century of activism, courage, and social change. It reminds us of the individuals and movements that fought for the rights that many people today consider fundamental. By understanding the history of International Women's Day, we gain a deeper perspective on how societies evolve and how social change happens. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed learning about this important topic while improving your English. See you in the next episode.